Welcome to the Making Money in the Music Business podcast, where we share insightful views on a variety of topics in the music industry that can help you make more money from your music business. And now, here are your hosts, Dr. William E. Smith and Kenya McGuire Johnson. So today, I thought about what we could cover, and I was thinking about what we had talked about before, which is getting gigs.
Yes, getting gigs. The challenge of the indie artist, the very indie artist,
totally
getting gigs.
Yeah. When you're first getting started, it's a very big challenge, and it's something that I know a few people that I'm working with are having some issues with it. So
I'm curious to hear what people are experiencing. I live in my little bubble, and I know what I experience. I think that sometimes musicians don't want to always say that they're getting rejected every minute. So I'm curious to hear, what's the level of rejection your friends are having? But,
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different issues around getting gigs that happened before back in the day. And then those things now are not as important, but then other things are important now. So, one of the things, just to tackle one thing, as an artist, I think that the first thing you should do is not worry about doing far away gigs, but more focused on the local gigs.
Right.
And getting known locally and getting venues to know who you are.
You
what would you say
absolutely
about
have
that?
to start. Oh my gosh. Yes. No, you need to start locally for a number of reasons. One, you got to prove yourself. It's kind of like you got to crawl before you walk, and I think that as musicians, a lot of times, because we've been playing since we're little or, really young and have been in all these different bands and recitals and stuff like that. For some reason, I think we feel like when it's time for us to do our own thing, we should be arrived. Like we arrived, it should be now. And it's a completely different playing game at that point. So, to think that you're going to be able to just, jump. I'm going to go to, I live in Iowa and I'm going to go jump to, Nashville and be a star is just not,
right.
That's not the way the game goes. So, it's one, you got to prove yourself, you got to show that in fact, people are interested, kind of in what you're presenting in a show and in a performance. And you gotta,
Plus, I think,
go ahead.
I think people that are in different other places. So if you're from Iowa, say, and you're going to go to Nashville, people in Nashville who might know people in Iowa are going to ask, well, who's this person from Iowa?
Right.
And if nobody knows you,
right.
then
and this is the thing. You got to increase the thing that allows you to actually get booked for gigs, okay, is your record. Your record is what is actually going. And when I say record, I don't mean your album. I mean like your draw. How many places have you played? Have you never played? That's what venues are looking at when they're trying to decide. And I talk about getting gigs a lot. I actually, with Creating Crimson, I have a client who that was why she came. Her whole goal, her whole mission was that she needed gigs. She had never gotten her own gig as her own artist. She had performed doing covers, for, background music, but just as her artist name, she had recorded an EP and she had never performed one of her songs at all at a venue or in a live space. And she wanted to do that. And so that's what we focused our coaching on. And by the end, of our sessions, she was pretty much playing regularly. And so I talked a lot about this to a lot of artists because it's not as one, obviously as simple as it appears, but it also maybe is not as logical as as you would think. You think, oh, I got a good, I'm good. Everybody should want to see me, but that's not.
Do you
how it
think
goes.
it's easier to get a gig having a CD?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yep.
I do. Because what's happened, so this just, I'm trying to do this really quick. What happens is when you are trying to be booked, and there is a difference between doing your own production, your own show versus having somebody book you. So for those listening, kind of, you need to be thinking when you're talking about performing, typically there's two options. And one is that somebody will hire you to perform, therefore be booked, or you will put on your own production, your own show yourself. And as an independent artist, the beauty of that is, you kind of have those, both those options. But the thing is is when a place is trying to book you, again, this is their business. And so you have to be thinking, you got to really put on your business hat when you're looking at booking, because a venue is looking at, I have to pay my rent. I have to pay my rent. And every night I need to make a minimum of whatever. And so if I'm a venue that, does live music, I not only need to pay you, I've got to also pay my staff to work it. And most venues have bars so there's a lot of things going on that they're trying to manage. And so if they know, if I bring in Joe and Joe brings, fills my house up. And so when I fill my house up, meaning my venue up, that means I have that many people to buy drinks and to buy food and to, make more money off of. So they're really looking at, can I break even basically, or not even really break even? Can I at least break even, but definitely try to at least make a profit off of booking or hiring this artist. And so your music may be fantastic. But if you don't, and the only way they're going to know your music is fantastic is if you've recorded something.
Exactly.
So that's why that becomes really important, because they're going to be, obviously checking out your music. And you may think that your music is great, but if you can't show that you have a record of performing anywhere, which means you don't really have a draw, and the draw is the key, then and you're competing with somebody who maybe has a really large draw, and their music may not be as strong as yours, but they're going to book that other person because they're going to bring in the people. So,
yeah, I think I definitely think having a CD is pretty much like the base thing to have when you're trying to go to a venue. Although there are those odd exceptions.
Yep.
when you have groups that are really popular locally, and they don't even have a CD.
Yep. Absolutely.
And they're odd exceptions. It's just they've been able to market themselves and build a following.
Right.
And I think what you said is actually very key, is that every gig that you do, it's a partnership. It's actually a joint venture business decision for a venue and an artist.
Right.
And you both have to bring something to the table because everybody's just trying to grow their business.
Yep. That's really the bottom line. And there are, like you just said, there are these exceptions. And some of the exceptions are frequent, meaning you have also a very key part of this is relationships. And so if you have built, if certain relationships are in place within that business venture together, in other words, if you're an artist and let's say you do have somebody that's helping you with booking, okay, and getting you gigs, and that person that's helping you, they have a significant relationship with the venue, the person who books for the venue. A lot of times that venue will, just based on good relationship, will go ahead and book you and give you that opportunity because they know that person. And so when you start getting really up into the industry, that's really where that's happening. Those people who are managers who are really booking shows for their artists, those are relationships. And, and those managers are not, they're only taking on those artists where they know their relationship will stand good, So that's important too.
So that's for that first level indie artist trying to get booked. Now let me switch gears and talk about maybe an artist that's doing some gigs and they're trying to grow. and how do they contact a booking agent? Like where are these booking agents? And then and how much would you allow them to take from the money from the gig?
I'm going to be honest here, and I don't know, there might be a lot of controversy with how I'm going to say this. Booking agents, and that's kind of a term that's starting to, I think, age itself. Kind of like demo. They don't. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they exist the way that we understood them to exist before, because of the independent nature of how music is moving now, how people are able to access music, how artists are able to kind of control their destiny a little bit more. The agent effect is kind of in a vulnerable space. So I would say this: if you're beyond that, if you're that first level, you're not going to get an agent. Okay, and if you do have an agent, it's only a name. Because this is the key. Mm-hmm. The agent has to make money off of you. So if and the way artists are really booked by major venues where they make a significant amount of money is based on their draw. If they're on the radio, are they top 20? And so booking people, their big thing is it's this part of this business again. Can I make, if you're only going to make $250 on this gig, and I'm saying I'm going to take 10%, which is usually standard minimum, 10 to 15 is usually what you're looking at. What, I'm going to make $25? That doesn't make any sense. So they're not trying to have artists that are only making $250. But most independent artists who are starting out, $250, all right, I'll do it. $250 by myself, I might do that gig. So now we're looking at those artists then that can book for probably a minimum of like your $1,000 range. But even in that $1,000 range, a booking person is only, what are they getting? They're only getting like $100 off of that, or, maybe $200. So really you're even pushing it further than the level of, so this is what dictates that agent. If you are an artist that can't get booked for a gig can't get booked for a gig more than $1,000, you're probably not going to be able to really get a worthwhile agent. Exactly. So so making $1,000 a gig, that doesn't even become a gig now. You know what I mean? Like if you're making $1,000, it's a gig, but you see what I mean? You're starting to get a little bit higher. So I really tell independent artists, focus on learning the business yourself. Really start learning that. Focus on being able to how to market that yourself. If you have somebody to assist you, great.
There you go.
Absolutely. But do you need an agent? No, probably not, because agent probably doesn't need you, and that's not that's not to be mean.
Harsh. Not to be mean. That is the harsh reality. You don't make enough on your gig for an agent to want to work with you to make whatever pittance they're going to make from booking you.
Exactly. And so you do have superstar indie artists. You have those independent artists who are superstars, and so maybe they're not making thousands of dollars per gig, but they can book a lot of gigs. So now then that starts to add up. So, so maybe I'm not getting, $2,000 a gig, but I am playing every, 3 and 4 times a week. Okay, well now that it becomes a little bit more attractive, for me to now invest in you, because I'm just making it up now in quantity, in the numbers of shows.
And the other side, and all of this, actually, the whole industry, and in any industry, is about really being creative on how you're structuring your business. So you just hit upon a good topic about if you have a whole number of shows during the week, then you also have opportunities to sell merch and CDs.
Exactly.
And what you can do is cut whoever's working with you to book you in these venues a deal on the sale of those CDs and merchandise.
Right. And so as you see, as we're going through, there's so many layers to this. And, I think the average independent artist, is somewhere kind of either in the very beginning or in the middle. And so that's why I do think, product and B, you're going to start off probably doing gigs that you're like, what? This isn't glamorous at all. I have all my equipment I have to lug in. I'm spending all this time, with my band trying to get, the music tight. And you really are working a lot. And then a lot of times you're booked, in spaces that don't have, you're getting dressed in the bathroom with everybody else with the one stall.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a green room, and you made they might not even have. They might be like, well, our bathroom is only for employees. I mean, it cannot be very glamorous at first, and you need to understand that that's normal. But as you go and as you grow, what happens is the more you're doing these gigs, now when it's time to kind of push things, you can say, I performed at this place, this place, this place, this place, this place. Or I performed at this one place every week. I was the entertainment. That's kind of how I started. I had a regular gig. I had a restaurant that had live entertainment every weekend. And so I performed the entire weekend once a month. So it was like a Thursday through Saturday gig that I did every month.
That was one of my favorite gigs. I had when Zanzibar was on the waterfront in D.C., I would do the Sunday brunch. And Lord have mercy, that was one of my favorite gigs. We got to have the nice breakfast with the pancakes and the whole on the water. I mean, it was like,
No, restaurant gigs are good. I mean, they, some of them can be challenging, but I will say this: the other thing that a restaurant gig does for you, and this is what I am so thankful. I call these Forrest Gump moments where you jump into, you land into things that you didn't, and they're like these incredible things that you didn't even know were incredible. But I
have so many of those.
Constant. I am Forrest Gump. You are Forrest Gump too. But that restaurant thing, you get the food, and see what it also did is, because the restaurant I was at, while it was an intimate space, and so people definitely, are hearing me. It's not like I'm such background that they don't even really hear me. I definitely was heard, but I am still kind of background music. So what's nice about that as a beginning artist, where you're still trying to get your craft down and your performance down and get the band tight and all of that, you can it's practice. It's dress rehearsals too. We call
it paid to practice.
It's a pay to practice. And so when you do have that bigger gig where all eyes are on you and it's a listening room and you're not background, you've at least experienced the live element, of performing in a room. So that I tell beginning, artists, independent artists, look for that gig, that regular, not those big venues, not House of Blues, not, you're not trying to, go to, those type quite when you're beginning. As you move up and you've practiced this and you've gotten a little bit more performances under your belt, then you can start looking at those options. But
one thing that I found was really helpful when I was starting to do gigs was that I was, and this is just how I am, I'm very punctual and I'm very professional. So, and I was just always like that. I always expected that. And that's how I wanted people to view me. And so with that, when the venues that I would play in, they realized that I was there on time, ready to play, ready to go. And what ended up happening, these companies would grow. And they got other venues, other restaurants. And so I started playing all these other restaurants.
Right.
And it becoming the house band, and people relied on me because they knew that I would be there, handle business, and things just would run smoothly. One less thing for them to worry about.
Absolutely.
So
no, you're bringing up such a critical point for artists to understand, and it ultimately impacts your income. Your professionalism, oh my God, you can be hired purely for that, okay? Because they know that you are reliable and that we don't have to worry about you. And I think the more you grow your music business, I know I am completely all about that. I don't work with people who can't get it together. I'm just going to be honest. I can't do it because it's too stressful. And so, it may, maybe my, I don't know, guitar player or whatever that I play with. And this is not the case at all because I love my guitar player. I think he's fantastic. But, it sometimes you get that musician he may not do all the riffs and special and make everybody fall out, but he's there on time. He knows his part and we're ready and we can roll and we don't have to ever, And I think you're putting yourself in a really, really tricky situation if you are working with musicians or you yourself lack that, because you will not get hired merely because of that.
If there's a musician you really love to play with, you think they're awesome, and in fact, when you make music together, it reaches this other level, but they're just unprofessional, or they just can't make the gigs all the time, or whatever it is for whatever reason, you don't hire them.
Right? Thank you, Will. Oh my God! Did you guys hear that? Don't hire them.
Don't hire them. But what you do is you invite them to jam sessions.
Yeah, right.
and you all have a great time at the jam session.
Right.
Other than that, if you want to work and have gigs.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was a really, I'm so glad you're saying this. This is probably one of the biggest challenges also of beginning artists, because you're not going to necessarily be able to attract, you're just starting. So that was something that for me, that was a really hard lesson for me, was that, here I am, I love music, and I needed musicians, but I wanted musicians who were at a certain level, but my gigs are paying $3. So the certain level musician who's always, maybe very reliant and timely, and, he's used to, or she's used to a certain level of pay too. And so now it's kind of like, I can't offer that. And so it becomes kind of tricky. If you're the type of musician that needs, if you're a singer and you don't play an instrument, you need some, another musician with you, that can become really tricky, because that level of an artist or musician may be like, you gotta convince them, and they gotta really believe in what you're doing, so that maybe if it's not what they're used to getting paid or whatever, they still take that chance with you, or they see that potential. So that's why your professionalism, your work ethic, your energy is just as important as your craft, because that is also a big part of how you're going to attract gigs and be able
to. And people wanting to have you in their venue.
Absolutely.
So the other thing, how to find these musicians is go to the jam sessions. Go sit in open mic nights. Just go to these events, see the musician, see who's running the event, and get as many cards and information as possible, and then talk to people. And
that can be hard for people. Well, I think a lot. I think as a singer, I see this a lot with singers. It's like the psychology of a singer. I don't know. I think that ability just to approach musicians and just be like, hey, I liked your sound. Give me your card. Like that was hard for me too. Like I would bring my husband with me, and he was much more aggressive with that. And so he would a lot of times would go up, because I was just too shy or nervous, or I'm like, who am I? That guy sounded amazing. Like, who am I going to go up to him and say, come play with me? And, I got 2 songs, so it was very intimidating for me. And so what I did, my husband was like, well, I'll go up to him. And so my first few musicians that I worked with, and actually the first drummer that I ever kind of did a show kind of thing with, he is actually my current drummer. And he took a chance on me, and, we saw him playing, and he was lighting it up. And I was like, my husband's like, you need to talk to him. I'm like, I'm not talking to him. No, I'm not talking to him. I got one song, and I don't even know if it's decent. But my husband went up to him, and he took a chance. And so you do have to, what you just said, you got to go to things, you got to hear musicians play. And if you know yourself as a singer that you are having a hard time networking like that, then, you have to build up that confidence, obviously. But don't be afraid to bring along somebody with you who maybe has a little bit more of that. And who
more
can,
confidence,
who's willing to kind of stand up for you, and bring you along. But you got to let them do that if, in fact, that person is there. Don't
another tip is to go to these colleges and universities, and go to their band performances, their jazz band performances, and listen. Listen to see who can play what types of tunes.
Yep.
and then go up after while they're cleaning up, taking it down, and talk to the students, because the students are really hungry to play and get that experience.
Hungry. I'm so glad you brought that up. And I will say most musicians, I've only met a very few musicians who weren't hungry, who weren't kind of like they want to play, they want to play. And I had to kind of get over my own stuff and realize that musicians, no, for them, it's a lot of times, and you think about your own self as a musician, you want to be able to play, you want to be able to have people hear what you're doing. So yeah, definitely go to the universities, and you're right. As much as you can go. I mean, I think that artists have to not just love to perform, but they need to really get enthusiastic about music in general, and be willing to go to shows. I still to this day, I'm a regular. I go to shows regularly, and what's wonderful now that I have kind of progressed my career a bit, I'm able to go to these bigger shows, and the confidence is better. So now I can go up at the end of an Emily King show or the end of a Lisa Fisher show, which I did, and went to her and said, listen, you're on fire, and let's talk. Right. And, and I've met, that's how I started working with one of my producers. Is I went up to, he's NDRE's bass player, and I've heard him and I loved what he does. And I took that. My husband came with me, but I went up to him.
You told me about that story. Yeah.
And, we made it. And I never imagined that I'd be working with him. I actually was just trying to kind of compliment him and maybe have some kind of, I don't know, maybe you'll remember my face. But artists, you got to go to shows. And, when you're starting out, it's a real good look. I have a question for you. What do you think about people putting on, I don't know, on Instagram or social media and saying, looking for drummers, looking for, email me here. What are your thoughts about that, and how much energy should artists spend doing that?
I think I can't speak on that really, because I never did that. And somebody else who's done it can probably tell you what success rate they've had with that. But just speaking from my vantage point, how I feel when I see that, I think it's more, it's better to just go out and meet musicians in person. Yeah, because music is a very personal process, and it's not when you meet people to collaborate with, more often than not, you've met them in a physical circumstance. It's the rare occasion. Now, there are occasions where you meet people online and you start collaborating with. Right. But I don't think that's as frequent as it is. Most of the musician relationships I have are from, live analog experiences. Right. Yeah. So,
yeah, no, I get exactly why you do that. And, because it's, particularly, I think, again, as singers, where we're not necessarily enculturated in the band, so as often. And so when we're looking for musicians to play with, it can be a little bit sometimes challenging. But I agree with you in that, music is very personal. And, I think that is one, you can try that and see kind of how it happens. I've never done that way either. What I have done, though, definitely is I will message musicians I know, and I will say, can you refer, who do you know? Right. Because these are musicians that I trust or musicians that I really respect, and I therefore trust who they're going to send over. And, most musicians kind of give you a little heads up on, certain things, maybe of who they're referring. So I think that's definitely a good way too.
That's always the better way to go. Yeah. Getting referrals.
Yeah. So,
So the last thing I wanted to at least address is, when you do have a venue who's interested in you playing there, what do you negotiate?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, it always obviously just depends on what the venue is saying they can offer.
Right.
I think, again, knowing your worth is a tricky thing, I think, period, for artists. Because I don't know, we elevate too high or we way too low undershoot ourselves. And so, I think, again, when we talk about these levels, if you're in that first beginning level, the negotiation power may be a little weak because you're just trying to...
You have no leverage.
Right. You're trying to just get up in there. I think, artists performing for free, because you have that too, I think that you need to be very careful with that. At the same time, understand that that's going to be a part of your career initially. It is a part of the land. I think as you start getting out, you start getting more, and what it becomes about is what can you present to them that justifies the negotiation that you're trying to give. So, if they're paying you something that you feel is lower than what you should get, you can't just say, I'm good, give me more. Like, you can't do that. You got to be able to say, well, this is my typical draw. These are the numbers that I'm expecting to pull in. These are, you can look at my social media to see the type of following I have in your, I'm on the radio, my song is played, I'm at this, those are all the things that so you just need things to support. So I do think you can negotiate fee. Definitely when it comes to I don't know, timing and kind of basic, day of the week. And, those things are always a little bit simpler, and venues I think, are a little bit more open to that. It's the money that, gets trickier. And just to let people know, those who are listening who, usually when you're getting booked by someone, the ways that you should be probably anticipating is either they're just giving you a flat fee for the night, no matter who comes. Those are, and if that's a good fee, then that's that cushy gig, because
Yep.
because now we're not relying on, oh Lord, it's more than my cousin and my mama coming to this show, because if just cousin and mama come and they say they're giving you this no matter what, but that could, I think, make obviously marketing and promotions very lazy at that point. But yeah, they'll either give you that or they'll give you a lot of times the percentage of the door. And that negotiation.
And the rare times they'll give you the flat fee and a percentage of the door.
Exactly. You might get that, or you may get a situation where you get a flat fee, and if it sells out, if they are at max capacity, they'll give you a bonus on top of that. And so, that door thing, I would say commonly it's between, your very low door is a 50-50 door. Then, most though are usually trying to do a 70-80, they're trying to get up to help you out a bit. Venues that do that door split. And then you have places that get really tricky where they're like the first 10, cover purchases are theirs. And then you only get after that number.
Exactly. I've seen that too.
Yeah. So that's harder. That's more common for your more basic level artists. And usually what happens with that is they're having multiple acts that night. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but as a general rule, you got to have something to negotiate with to negotiate.
Yep.
So
ta-da! Yes.
you got to have numbers, you got to have facts and figures, and you got to be able to show them that you can do X.
Yep.
Before you get Y and Z.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a hard lesson to learn. I mean, I know I didn't understand that when I was first starting. I wasn't understanding why everybody wasn't booking me the moment I emailed them. I didn't get it. But now, having gone through this for some years now, I get it. And even at the level, I just will say, I don't have a manager. I have people. I tell you, I got people. I have people that I've built some good relationships with. And so, through those people, if there is a specific venue or a city that, I know I'm going to be in and I would like to perform in, then I start utilizing my people. And this is why, it becomes utterly utterly important. Relationship building. I'm telling you, musicians, I gotta. Oh my God! I don't burn those bridges. I know we get mad, we get frustrated. I mean, there's certain relationships. I mean, I have burned bridges before. Okay, I have completely set the arson on fire. I don't want to have anything else to do. And I'm fine and I'm happy with that. But I would say the majority. You never know where that's going to show itself up again. So you need to be very careful with your relationships and how you treat people, how you brand yourself on social media. If you're always dissing people and talking about people, or you're always being critical of this singer and that voice and that player, then when you're like, come listen to my stuff, people remember that stuff. So
exactly. Yeah. And it does get easier.
Yeah.
As you do it more.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point, where people refer you.
Yep.
For gigs and venues, and sometimes you're turning stuff down because you just don't have the time, and that's a very good place to be in.
Yeah. That's the sweet spot. And you also, as an independent artist, remember you're your own kind of pressure. You know what I mean? You're your own, like you, that's the beauty of being independent. Like you kind of get to kind of set this ship up, and so you're setting the sail. So you can set it up in a really horrible way and have a very bumpy, or you can, and so if you're not, I know for me, I'm in a season right now where performing, I'm actually purposely, I'm not looking for gigs right now. And so if somebody comes and has asked, and I'm asked to play at something and it's reasonable and it works, then I've accepted that. But I'm not even putting myself, my intentions, my energy isn't even in that space because, I
totally hear you.
Yes. So, because I know then I would have to be, it just becomes hard. And that was because you get afraid, am I going to become, irrelevant? Are people going to forget that I exist? And, for me in my life, I know that, I get Sade. I get it. I get going and hiding and I by no means am anywhere remotely near a Sade status of people coming to my shows. But when you're, for me traveling and I was very intentional about finding gigs and finding shows and going, beyond Chicago. And, I was able to make that happen even internationally. But I realized the importance of a break too. And so
you got to recharge.
Yeah, you have to
recharge.
Take care of yourself. So those who are giggers and who are jobbing and who are playing, night after night or multiple times a week, you got to pay attention to that. And while that is most people that become when you're playing like that, that's because that's food, that's rent, that's car. And so I get it. And so, but you still have to, in the mix of that, start looking at if that's wearing you out and burning you out, this gigging lifestyle, you have to start now. This is where we have to be creative and why money and business. We have to start thinking about what are the other ways.
Set up a business.
Yep. What are the other ways that I can generate income and still use my music and use my craft? And there are many ways, and you don't. That's one way. That is, and it's a common way. But there are other things you can do to diversify.
Yep, and we offer both of those options and ideas with Creating Crimson with Kenya's coaching service.
Absolutely.
And I'm one of her coaches. And you can also read about some of those ideas and get some plans and some steps from my book, Making Money in the Music Business.
Yep. And
you can check that at makingmoneyinthemusicbiz.com, and you can visit Kenya's site at...
You can visit it at creatingcrimson.com. And while you're on that, don't just hear it from me and, Will here on the podcast. I too am having an event, a series called Art Voices Matter, where I'm bringing in people who are in the game. We're talking celebrity artists here who really, not only make a living, but make a pretty, high living off of it. And they're going to be providing strategies along this line too, of how did they get these shows? How did they get that Grammy? How did they get it where they weren't gigging every night, but and so that if you go to artvoicesmatter.com, you'll see. But we've got from MC Light to Claude McKnight from the group Take Six, to foreign exchange members, Fonte and Zoe, and some other underground, Mark DeClive Lowe, who's a DJ, who I really encourage producers who are listening to this podcast and DJs, because that's another whole other space of getting gigs and making money, and they can make a lot of money. So Mark is coming in to represent that sector. And then I have a soul jazz singer, Shantae Can. So, make sure you use these resources. Definitely, Will's book is a huge, I think it needs to become like the dictionary or the encyclopedia of, how do we do this? And then for Creating Crimson, beyond the masterclass series with those artists, I do one-on-one. Let's figure out how can we make this work in your lifestyle, and that's really my goal. So
yep. And you can also reach out to us at you have an email for folks to reach out.
Definitely please email if you have questions. If you have questions about Creating Crimson, you can email info@creatingcrimson.com. If you have questions about the Art Voices Matter series, particularly that series is going to be held in Chicago, but if you're not going to be able to be in Chicago, the series is June through October, and you're not going to be able to be there, we do have a way for you to still participate. So if you email info@artvoicesmatter.com, I can answer questions about that and, help you out to
You're going to be streaming that at all?
Well, I can, yes and no. Yes, no. There will be a component of that, absolutely. But that is, we are really trying to push our Chicago people to come physically. But if you're not in Chicago, if you're going to be outside of Chicago, we do have that option. So we want to make sure that that everybody can partake as much as possible.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you want to have questions about the podcast, you can email me at drwsmith@makingmoneyinthemusicbiz.com.
Yeah.
That's drwsmith@makingmoneyinthemusicbiz.com.
Right. And if you're curious to know, who's this Kenya chick and why is she... Okay, so Creating Crimson just talks about my business, but if you really want to know what I'm doing as an artist, and I really try to tell clients, please don't just go to Creating Crimson. Make sure that what I'm talking about, I'm not just talking.
Right.
I actually have some music, out there, some projects, and, I've gotten some really, really wonderful and cool opportunities. So you can learn more just about me in general at kenyamjmusic.com. So that I'm legit.
And I'll provide all these links. Yeah, you are totally legit.
I'm legit. I'm not. I mean, when I say legit, meaning I'm not making up. I'm not just getting on and just talking out my head. Like I that's the cool thing about being a coach. I'm going through the same thing as the artist. Like we're in this together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'll provide the links to all this stuff for the podcast, and you can just go to my website and get all that. But it's been great.
Yeah.
Thanks for all that valuable information.
Yes. Thank you. And thanks for the questions. You're such a good leader. Such a good facilitator.
Well, I just know what I've been through, and I'm teleporting back to that moment in time where I was like, how?
Right. I hear you. Yes. So this is cathartic for us too, guys who are listening. Yeah.
It is.
All right.
Well, thanks, Kenya. I appreciate the insights.
No, thank you.